Right now, I'm coming to you from the European Parliament in Brussels, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone joining us both in person in this room today, but also online. Water is becoming an increasingly contested and scarce resource. Nearly 1/3 of Europeans are confronted with water stress, and that number is expected to grow as droughts become more intense and more frequent with climate change. At the same time, we can also see water, managing water, deciding who gets access to it, move up the political agenda. And so recently, we've seen more and more calls for an EU-wide solution to the issue. Some refer to it as a blue deal for Europe. And I'm very much looking forward to discussing today what a blue deal could look like, what other policy approaches we might need, and how it could be financed. But before we move to our discussion, I'll just go through a couple of housekeeping remarks. So I would like to thank our sponsor, the Federation of Polish Entrepreneurs, for making this event possible, and also our fantastic Politico Live team for bringing it all together. We would like this to be as interactive as possible, so I'd encourage you to participate by tweeting about the event at Live Politico, and also by asking questions. I see that a couple of you have already submitted some on Slido using the hashtag #SpotlightPolitico. I just ask you that if you submit your questions, you also tell us your name and your organization to make sure it's a very transparent debate. You can also already share your thoughts by answering the poll presented by our partner, the Federation of Polish Entrepreneurs, that you can see on the screen here. Asking how should an EU Blue Deal be financed if it were to be implemented. We'll get back to the results of this poll at the end of our session. Before we get started with our panel, I'd now like to invite our partner, Beata Daczyńska-Muzyczka, the president of the management board of the BGK Bank, for her opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Dear Member of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests. It is a very important discussion, and let me share with you at the beginning with some quotations. Anyone who can solve the problems of water will be worthy of 2 Nobel Prizes, one for peace and one for science. John F. Kennedy, 1962. It has been more than 60 years since the US president said these words, and the subject is still pressing. We will also be reflecting on this today at our event, how to better manage water resources. Would a blue deal be a game changer in terms of activities related to the improvement of access to clean water and the sustainable management of water resources? It is a question mark. If we have the chance, of course, not all of us, but the beautiful picture you can see, how look our globe from space. It is really beautiful blue planet. Why? Because we have plenty of water in our oceans. Our planet is 70% of water, consists of the water, not land. But, huge but, 1%, only 1% across the world, it is only drinking water. And this drinking water we have to have for 8 billion of population across the world. As a BGK, the Polish Development Bank, we address these challenges to initiate cooperation and cross-country coordination. We came up with the 3W initiative. This is a different 3W than the one we have known for many years. This is not a worldwide website. Our 3W is derived from the first letter in Polish of three key resources: water, hydrogen, and carbon. Yes, I don't afraid to say carbon because it is very important, because how we use carbon, it is a different story. There is the reason why water is mentioned here in the first place: water, hydrogen, and carbon. After all, this is a story about ourselves, because after all, humans beings are made of 70% of water. But if you take into account all these assets that I mentioned about hydrogen and carbon, it is 97% of all these assets in our body. If I share with you my personal anecdote very shortly, I have the meeting with students, and at the end of this meeting, they asked me what can change the future of our existence and the business and how we manage our life, and especially business. And because the last 30 years, it was the internet. It is www. And I answer it will be www, but it will be different www. And this is the story about this www that we implemented in Poland. Our 3W initiatives aim is to support development of water, hydrogen, and carbon new technologies. It is fastest growing in the industry, currently worth in 4.6 billion euro only in Poland. So it's a very important sector for our development. It is a unique concept that brings together science, business, and public administration from different areas to build together a modern and sustainable economy based on synergies of these three resources. What is going with water, we can ask? What's happened because Europe is deserting? When discussing issues related to water purity and universal access, it is very important to be aware of challenges we face and to educate ourselves about them. Global freshwater demand would outstrip available supply by 56% by 2030. It is not far away from now. In some European countries, we have already seen social tension between farmers and environmental groups. Hope those tensions will not transform into water war like in South America. Most water regimes in Europe are legacies from times of plenty. The focus of legislation is mostly put on quality of water. It now needs to be transformed to reflect scarcity. The problem is not just limited to Europe's dirtiest region either. The tangle of local water regulation, leaky pipes of extreme weather is turning even relatively wet part of Europe, such as Poland or Germany, into areas of water stress. Belgium. We are in Belgium right now, a country famed for grey weather mostly. It is the most weather-stressed country in Europe due to population density and poor infrastructure, according to the WRI index published last month. Bulgaria, Romania, and Italy top the worst offenders list based on Euro data. In Rome, for example, 42% of water is lost through the cyclic infrastructure that in some neighborhoods dates back to the Roman Empire, as we said in the previous discussion. Nevertheless, the quality of water is still the pressing issue to solve. The Water Framework Directive by now did not assure achieving environmental objectives. In my country, for example, drinking water deficit will be particularly significant in central Poland and may rise up to 30% in 2050. 20% of investment in water infrastructure are concentrated in Warsaw, around 220 million euro last year, only last year, with huge underinvestments in rural areas. Yes, we need right now a huge investment in water management. To water industry executives, leaks not only represent throwing water down the drain, but throwing away money too. More than 78,000 businesses of various sizes across the EU work in water reuse, waste and distribution. According to the OECD, all EU countries except Germany need to increase annual expenditure on water by more than 25% to comply with EU drinking and wastewater directives. On the top of this comes the ever-expanding water network of data centers, which use larger amounts of water for their cooling and humidification system, alongside demand for high-tech semiconductor manufacturing, which requires ultra-pure water for washing the chips. Google's data center in Belgium consumes enough water to fill 408 Olympic swimming pools. Investment in nuclear power plants will significantly increase water needs. Agriculture is a huge water consumer, competing with the other branches of economy and new upcoming undertakings such as energy transition and digitalization. In Poland, the Polish government has implemented the strategic investment program, and BGK is an operator of it. This program enables local authorities to finance key investments. One of the most important areas is water and sewage infrastructure. To date, funding worth about €3 billion has been awarded for more than 2,700 investments in water management. How looks policy across the EU? A fragmented country-by-country approach to modernizing water infrastructure is emerging, in stark contrast to the holistic strategy required to ensure resilient, safe water system across the continent. It's why we all need European Blue Deal as a holistic strategy for water crisis. In order for European Blue Deal to be sustainable, it needs to address priorities of all EU member states. This should create a much-needed consensus on this issue. Within the 3W initiative I talked about at the beginning of my speech, we have already built a community of several hundred organizations in which you will find international companies from all over the world, leading Polish universities, scientists, and committed community. It all happened in a short period of time. For us, this proves that the 3W fits perfectly with the needs of today, also in terms of management of water resources. I strongly believe that today's panel will be a starting point for broader discussion about the responsibility for water as a cornerstone for human life. Ladies and gentlemen, we can survive without oil, without gas, without energy even, without our fantastic gadgets like computers, but not without water. Let's inspire each other for comprehensive action to save water as our source of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Beata. I'm now very happy to welcome our panelists on stage. Please join me up here. So I'm very glad to be joined today by Florica Finkoya, who's the Director General at DG Environment of the European Commission, by Oliver Löbel, the Secretary General of Water Association Euro, by Karine Measson, who's the head of the Water Management Division at the Projects Directorate of the European Investment Bank, and last but not least, by Jan Olbrycht, a Polish lawmaker of the European People's Party, who is a member of the Committee on Budgetary Control. So, I think this should be working now. I would like to start today's discussion with, I think, an announcement that everyone in the water world, so to speak, in Brussels at least, has heard with great interest, namely the announcement that we might be or should be seeing a water resilience initiative presented by the European Commission still during this mandate, and it's planned for the first quarter of next year. Florica, could you give us any more details on what this initiative will look like?
Thank you. And
I think you
with
might need
pleasure.
to,
Yes, I thought she had just posted. With pleasure, and I'm very happy to be here because when I look at the theme, it's solving Europe's water problem. It has two implications. First of all, people recognize that there is a water problem, and second, there's the ambition to solve it. And in that, let's say, vein, you have to put also the Water Resilience Initiative, which indeed was announced by the President von der Leyen at the State of the Union speech, and our new Vice President, Executive Vice President Šefčovič, announced the timing, indeed, spring next year at his hearing. Now, spring next year, that means just before the European election. So don't expect that this will be now a legislative proposal. Of course not. It's a scoping paper. It's a white paper. It's a reflection paper. It is something that launches a whole movement in order to be ready and hopefully then influence the mandate of the next Commission. Because as it is said here, I guess, and also with the Blue Deal a proposal, that will be a discussion that we have to have under the next Commission. Now, what will it entail? First of all, there's a lot of work ongoing in member states. And again, when I look just at the Slido question there, when you say funding, and I don't want to prejudge that here, but it says, does it have to come from EU or national levels? And most people say yes. Why? Because there is a long, strong subsidiarity angle. Member states do work on it, and they take it very serious, and it starts at the local, regional and national level. But it's also cross-border, it's also transboundary. And actually, it is also a global issue. But anyhow, so we will look at what have member states done, what are they doing, also in line with our water acquis, because we have a very strong water legislation acquis, not only on the groundwater and the basin water and the drinking water and the urban wastewater. I mean, it's a whole set. I think the EU has the best and the most sophisticated legislation on water, which, by the way, has been also, at least the groundwater or the water framework, has been copied by China, not for a big reason, and they even confirmed that to me last month when I was there. So we will look at what is happening at national level, and then we look at scenarios. Why does it matter so much in different sectors? It can be transport, it can be agriculture, it can be energy, as it was said. It is the drinking water, so the citizens, it is business. So we look at and have to look at this, I would rather not call it a holistic, but an integrated approach. You have to look at what are the effects, are the challenges, but also opportunities in it. And that means we will work with every DG in the house, and very much also on looking whether artificial intelligence, data, digitalization can help. But we will so work on scenarios, scoping, as I said, scoping what could be needed in the future without prejudging what is coming out. We will definitely have to also look at the international dimension. I think together with my colleague, we both were at New York beginning of the year at the World of the Water Conference, UN Water Conference. Whatever we do nationally has an effect on the neighbor, but also on the wider neighbor and even the wider neighbor. So we have to look at the international dimension. And the EU is the biggest donor under the SDGs. So I think this is a responsibility we have, but also an opportunity, and also where we learn from others, because what's coming to us as drought, has been experienced in other continents before, so we can learn from them and we can team up. I think the idea would be to set up a wise persons group, and then in order to come throughout the year with different events, assessments on our key assessments of what member states do, and then also have the wise person group rendering some recommendations, hopefully, just in time before the new Commission takes office, and that's sort of what we aim at.
Thank you very much. And just a quick follow-up there, because you've also, outlined it will be a reflection paper that's going to guide or feed into the mandate of the next Commission. Can I ask, do you think that, the next Commission will have to come up with something that could be called a blue deal for Europe?
I think the blue deal, as much as I have now read about it, is very close to some of the ideas I just mentioned. However, as I said, we also look at a wider dimension. The Blue Deal very much looks at fresh water, so inland waters, lakes, rivers, and so on, perhaps the coastal water. When we really look at the water stress that we will face in Europe, we have to look at the global dimension, and the oceans come in. That's another part of the blue deal, which, however, is not so much developed now because there is a focus on fresh water. But I would rather bring in also another element, and that is we always talk about the blue water, but actually we have the green water, which is probably, and science at least tells us in the Turning the Tide report, which I really recommend to read, Turning the Tide it is called, that the green water, what does it mean? Green water is even more important because it is the forests, the peatlands, the mangroves, the grasslands, the nature that can absorb water, not only keep water but also bring back water into the atmosphere and then make the whole cycle go, which is extremely important when you know that drought is the biggest threat, and actually I was told Europe becomes ground zero for drought. So preserving the green water, equally important. So I would probably broaden the Blue Deal to also that one. And by the way, that's why we have engaged now on soil protection, nature restoration law, forest monitoring, and things like that. Because you cannot just look at blue water, you have to look at the green water.
Thanks very much. Karen, I would like to turn to you. I know you're also quite involved on the international agenda. When you're hearing from Florica, what the Commission will propose in the spring might tie into the international dimension, what's your reaction to that? Do you think that's a satisfactory approach, or what other things should be tackled?
Thank you very much. Of course, on the EIB side, we very much welcome the initiative, which is extremely important for Europe. But as you said, Florica, the topic is also global. For me, water is the invisible enabler to a green transition across sectors. And I'm very happy to see that here today, but also this year, the topic gained a lot of momentum and a lot of visibility. We had the UN Water event in New York, as Florica said. We had the chance to issue our water sector orientation there, which is called Building Climate Resilient Water Systems. The UN just announced that they would launch another event in 2026 to follow up on the event of this year, showing that we won't wait for a few other decades before relaunching another event. We made the link between water and climate, and I think this is a critical one, climate mitigation and also climate adaptation. And this is something very important. Of course, this is not new. But this is important that the topic has gained momentum in a few member states during the summer, but still now the member states are facing critical issues that you can see in the industry sector, in the construction sector, in the tourism sector. So this is really important to act. There's, in my view, really a window of opportunity with the civil society realizing that we're all going to run into problems if we don't act, and we know that actually inaction has a big cost. We're talking about water droughts, but if I take another topic linked to water, which is sea level rise and the impact that this could have on coastal areas. the total estimated cost of coastal protection, relocation of people and loss of land to sea level rise is projected to range from $200 billion to $1 trillion by 2100, depending, of course, on the increase in sea level. So we're going to talk about financing. We know this is not an easy topic, but we need to keep in mind that the cost of inaction will be much higher. So this is very important that already now we start planning, we start better understanding the risks that we face. I'm working in a bank, so we have a know your customer habit. When you look at the creditworthiness of your borrowers, I would say know your risk, know your climate risk, know your water risk. And then once you know them, it's easier to plan, to manage a resource which is a finite resource. So we need to manage it very carefully.
Thank you. Yeah, we will indeed come back to the issue of financing, but I'd like to turn to you, Oliver. What does the water sector think when it hears the Commission speak about the topic, the announcement, the details that have just been given? Is that sufficient to tackle the challenges that you're facing? Or, yeah.
It is, of course, a very positive step. So we see today that water policies at all levels are quite often scattered. So you don't have cross-cutting coordination, you have still silo thinking, you have policies for industry, policies for agriculture, but you don't have water policy as such. So this is still something that is really missing, and which is making life more difficult for us. So from that point of view, I think it's a very positive step forward. What we must avoid, of course, is, let's say, a piece of paper that is developed with many good intentions, but a bit top-down, and which remains somewhere there as a piece of paper. We must get the buy-in of all levels. So the local level was mentioned, very important, regional level, national, but also civil society, industry, agriculture, of course, the water sector. So we need really this comprehensive strategy, and we need the governance structures for that. So we see, for example, the need for a Commission Vice President for water to overcome this silo thinking, to have a person in charge of making sure that water policy, that water is at the heart of all legislation that is coming out of Europe, and the same, of course, should happen also at the national level. So we see this as a very positive step. We hope, of course, that we will not only look into water quantity, which is an issue in many areas, but also at water quality. And one number was given at the beginning. There is enough water in Europe, even in the Mediterranean basin, but it's salt water, it's seawater. We cannot use it. So the right water quality, free from pollution and contamination, makes a whole difference on the availability of water for all the needs that society has, drinking water, but also industry, agriculture, etc. So we really have to link both quantity and quality. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think we will, in a couple of minutes, we will hear from Pietro Dell'Otto from the European Economic and Social Committee, who will respond and I'm sure have lots of interesting thoughts on some of these points. But first, Jan, I would like to turn to you. And we've already mentioned the issue of financing. Now, it often becomes a bit of the elephant in the room. So how do you think, when it comes to rethinking how we approach water, what role do you think financing can play? And maybe also referring to the poll that we had on slide up until just now, at which level do you think it should be tackled?
Yes, thank you very much. It's always very interesting that for this debate is not colleagues from the ENVI committee, which are really concentrating, but someone from the budget committee. I'm the rapporteur for the MFF and for the MFF revision, and I'm working on this, but also on the urban issues. And I must say that why I think it's very interesting is because I found also in the documents from the Polish organizers that my former organization, which is the Association of Polish Cities, is also active. I used to be the vice president of this as a mayor of one of these Polish cities. You want to put me into the trap. I mean, to speak about the about money. But what I've heard also from the European Commission is very diplomatic answer. I mean, what the Commission is thinking about the future. But I think that I've just finished the meeting with the Eurocities, the big cities of Europe, and there was the Vice Mayor of Bologna. She said that for fighting climate change, we need the climate for change. This is, I think, very good expression. I mean, what about the climate for change? Do we have the climate for change? Do we have the climate for the Blue Deal now in Europe? If you allow me, before giving the information about money, I just would like to react. This is what has been said very clearly. This is the last 6 months of this Commission. So this Commission will finish after the European election, which is not the election of members of Parliament. This election is the fight between the political families in Europe, which will influence the European Commission, European Council, etc., etc. So this is the last months will be very difficult because there will be the political battle between different approaches concerning the future of Europe. This is not only about the future European Commission. This is about the second part of this programming period. I mean, this is about 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is the beginning of the work on the next period. And the question, what about after 27? And I think this is a very, very clear information because it was very interesting in the State of the Union speech that we have this kind of initiative concerning water. But, you know, the white paper, it means it's very careful. It means that let's prepare the document. And while what Madam Director explained, we have a lot of legislation about water. The question is, can we now coordinate everything? Can we find a special solution? And what about the Green Deal? And I must say that what I see in this building as a member of the Parliament, there is, of course, the risk that the people working on the Green Deal, they will be afraid that the Blue Deal will be the danger for the Green Deal. So as a kind of competition, no, they will not say it's not important. They will say that in fact, the Blue Deal is a part of Green Deal. So this will be the first reaction. Of course, I understand that in your documents, it's a question of complementarity. And of course, the real political challenge will be to prove that we don't need just fund, that we need a strategy. Because the Green Deal is not the fund, the Green Deal is the strategy. The whole complexity of different instruments, financial instruments, the guarantees, etc. So the question is, to prove, and this is, I think, the information from the Social Committee, also to prove that we need two strategies which are complementary, which cannot exist without each other. Right? I think it will not be easy. It will not be easy because I see the emotions among the politicians in this building about the Green Deal. You know, there's a lot of emotion saying how to manage. So I think that it will not be easy. It will not be easy. That's why the answer of the Commission was very, okay, what about the Blue Deal? I mean, this is about also the green water. It means that this is the link to Green Deal. Be careful, because I think this is very important. When we started the Green Deal, the expectation was very high. Now we have the set of legislation. The question is, are we ready now to introduce another strategy with all the complexity? To do it, we need to answer a very basic question, and that was said also at the beginning in the initial speech. What about subsidiarity? I mean, what is the competence of the member states in this issue, and what is the competence of EU? I think it will be a really important element, a really important one to clarify, because you know very well that subsidiarity very often is used to block something. If someone wants to block something, no, subsidiarity. It's not us, it's them. Now, I think it should be very clear in preparing this strategy, what is the competence of the member states, and they're absolutely independent, and what is the competence of the EU? This is a question of programming, the additional financing, and creating the new instrument on the European level. It should be prepared before the whole strategy starts, because if not, it will stop. And last remark about financing. Yesterday, I had a meeting about the MFF revision. MFF revision was the question is, what about the governments? Do they really want to have the revision of MFF or not, if the money is now over. I mean, we don't have any margins, we have new challenges. And of course, most of the governments, they say, no, we don't give any money. We would like to have a redeployment of money. Oh, wait, let's take money from these parts which are not spent and don't touch national envelopes. So, okay, don't touch cohesion policy. Don't touch agriculture. You can take it from something which is not national envelopes. And yesterday we were discussing with the Spanish presidency, and of course there is a list, which is possibly to redeploy Horizon, Erasmus, and the others. They are not national envelopes. So if you want to redeploy, you can don't touch national envelopes. So you can take only from something which is European in terms of Commission. If I can suggest you, and also answering the question which has been put on the internet, I would like to warn you to start with speaking about the new fund. The first question should be said, what kind of fund? Is it the fund which should be by definition based on the algorithm distributed between the member states, or it will be the fund on European level, when next we will have the competition? I mean, who can get money? If the center of excellence or center of something or the need, etc. Something which is in the national envelopes cannot be touched, because all the governments will fight for national envelopes.
Thank you.
If I can suggest you, if you want to say, put it into national envelopes.
Thank you very much. Sorry, we're a bit tight on time, but I would like to give you the opportunity to respond to some of the concerns we've just heard. But before that, I would like to now welcome Pietro Dell'Otto on stage. Mr. Dell'Otto is the president of the Consultative Committee on Industrial Change and also the coordinator of the EU Blue Deal Initiative at the European Economic and Social Committee. So please, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Whatever you prefer, but if you want to, do you want to take a mic? Just in case.
Oh, no, it's necessary, but I think it's good. Here. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here because after 1 year, when we launched this idea to have a EU Blue Deal, we had a lot of opportunity to exchange and to embrace and to agree with the European Parliament, to have the same roadmap in order to finalize our work as EEC. Not because I launched it or because the CCMI is the coordinator, but the organized civil society institution in Europe agreed with the European Parliament to deal with this important topic. The right to safe and clean drink water and sanitation is a human right. It's a right. But there are still 2 million European citizens that do not have access to clean water. There is a need for a new comprehensive water policy. 1 year ago, when we appreciated all the high-quality rules, directives at European level, we realized and we assumed that there was the need of a comprehensive policy, not a puzzle of good tales of a larger puzzle, but a comprehensive policy on that. Our institution, the European Economic and Social Committee, has adopted a set of own initiative opinions covering economic, social, environmental and geopolitical aspects of water. We examine water challenges impacting agriculture, industries, infrastructures and sustainable consumption, and put forward concrete proposals, concrete, not, allow me, blue washing action, but concrete proposal, of course, to be developed, to be focused, to be discussed in the future. For a finally comprehensive and ambitious EU water policy. Our works will end the 26th of October, when we have the final approval of the umbrella opinion of the other, including the result coming from the other 8 opinions on that. And we will present here in Brussels, of course, during our plenary, with the Commission, with speaker coming from United Nations, from New York, and we'll have this final proposal, the call of the EU Blue Deal, after we had the opportunity to send a letter as European Parliament and European Economic and Social Committee to all heads of states and governments in order to embrace and to endorse and to push this kind of initiative. Someone, Jan, you mentioned investments. Of course, EU water investment needs a long-term approach to increase resilience against water stress. To know where and how to invest, we need an up-to-date information and data at the EU level on the state of existing water infrastructure, both public and private, and other pressing water investment needs in the member states. We have no data in Europe. We have no data at national, official data at national, regional, local level. We don't know how much is the consumption for each sector in many parts of our continent. And it's amazing. We are trying to digitalize the system, but we have no measurement devices. So it's crazy. We call for the establishment of a EU Blue Transition Fund. You're right. To form a single EU access point for water investments, combining public investment and new innovative form of financing. Not a new fund, but a single point, entry point, in order to collect all the existing and heading, in some way, other public or private funds. There is no single database on investments, comprehensive databases on water, including European, national and regional governments. We have not. If you try, you will fail. The development of water and sanitation infrastructure should be financed, particularly in socially disadvantaged urban and rural neighborhoods, for example, in the context of renovation wave. This fund should support resilient infrastructure, sustainable water management, research and uptake water efficient technologies and investment in quality jobs and training. It should be a positive approach, not negative and penalizing for water consuming activity. It should be a positive approach, pushing to increase sensitiveness, awareness, but also to adopt water saving technologies, water saving processes, and water resilient actions at any level. Prices. Water has been considered for granted for free for centuries. For free. But the price and the price system has not to be considered as a business. We adopt the concept of a fair price for any usage. But for sure, we need to avoid to have 400 euros for a bottle of water like in this one. Because it's better to spend 400 euros for a bottle of good cognac, I think. Okay. All water users, agriculture, industries, households, Public sector in the EU should be encouraged to adopt sustainable solutions and practices. We need to support industries and agriculture in the transition and the adoption of water-efficient technologies. We need a sectoral approach for industries, since different industries have different water use needs and different opportunities to become water efficient. We are also proposing the introduction of a water consumption level. But, most important, one of the most important, we focused on the need to have absolutely public planning at the river basin level. Now we have national, regional, local, basin, competencies overlapping, fighting each other for different purposes. And the result, we are here to discuss in 2023 how to overcome this. We are experiencing a real mess. We propose to have an advisory EU Blue Deal stakeholder platform that should be set up on shared best practices, develop specific standards, contribute a regular update on Blue Deal action plans, and promote partnerships. And at the end, on the international scene, the EU should increase its effort on blue diplomacy, and water should be integrated into EU's foreign policy and external relations, including neighbourhood, trade and development policies. But let me conclude. Who knows me? I'm very provocative, not really diplomatic. No, I'm trying to be diplomatic. But I really appreciate this event and the opportunity to exchange, because if we are talking, is one thing. If we want to be effective, effectiveness before the efficiency is the first goal, we need to have, and we will call in our proposal, of course, an executive vice president. Otherwise, in the next commission, no power, no policy, no effect. So we need to have a real portfolio in the next commission. Until 1 year ago, no single word on water in a foresight annual report. Of course, already appreciated all the efforts, all the works done by some, of course, DG Envy in the Commission, and I'm finishing. But I think we need to have a foresight approach. All commissions, all DGs involved, in order to have a real cross-cutting action, not single, not a single like a silos. Silos has been to set aside in this case. Really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Thank you for Politico and the European Parliament, and all of you for listening to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'd now quickly like to gather some reactions to what we've just heard, and I've seen you've all, taken quite a lot of notes. So I think there's a lot to discuss, but I would ask you to keep your interventions relatively short, maybe to a minute or so, because we're quite short on time. Maybe let's start with you, Karen. Also, when you're hearing the different takes we've just heard on, a fund that we would need, what role do you think investment can also play? And also, do you think, a fund like this would be something that's needed to finance the transition ahead of us?
Yeah, of course, there's a question of financing. Maybe something which is important and has been mentioned. I mean, we talk here about both public sector and private sector. We need to talk about public financing and private financing. There's no way the public sector alone can solve the water crisis. No way. So this is really have to be embedded in our thinking. So it's not a public sector fund which is going to solve the issues. Sometimes this is useful to support solving the issues, but this is not enough. On the private sector front, I really believe that the industry will have to act very quickly and to invest money. Can be in water reuse, can be in other technologies in order to adapt a changing climate. We have a taxonomy now, so I know that this can be perceived as a difficult tool to manage because this is a bit new. There may be some applicability issues, but still, this is a tool which, in my view, brought attention to the fact that water is part of climate. And there are investors willing to invest money in the green transition. And if they see that water is part of it, they will be willing to invest money in projects ensuring a fair transition. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. Of course, we need to manage and to make the link between the projects, between the public or private sector in need of money and the investors having this money that they are willing to invest in the green transition. But this is a tool. Of course, there are also public banks like the EIB, like other IFIs, or public development banks willing to invest more in the water sector. We built a few years ago this water finance coalition with other public development banks all over the world. And we just launched a call for action because there's potential for these banks to invest more in the water sector, which is relatively unknown compared to other sectors. Now, when I'm talking about a bank, of course, a bank is a bank and provides mainly loans. This means that they need to be repaid at some point. This means that there's a need for revenues. And in that sense, the question of the treaties and tariffs in particular cannot be avoided. Of course, we need to ensure a fair transition, a just transition, and there can be mechanisms to ensure that all vulnerable people have a fair access to water. There can be a transition as we build this just transition mechanism for mitigation and for energy. We could think about it when it is about water, but this needs to be part of the reflection.
Thank you very much. Jan, I know you have to go. Is there anything you would want to respond very quickly, just in a minute, to what we've just heard from the ESC?
I just want to absolutely reinforce your message. And of course, I don't know if the Vice President will be realistic, but I think that we'll have the Special Commissioner for the Climate now, so who knows. But according to do everything to make everything more coordinated, less silos, absolutely I support it. And I think that the idea of the Blue Deal is a very good idea. I don't think it's the short term, it's much more the process and much more thinking about the strategy. We're using all the possible instruments, and you need patience and you need political effort, and of course keep going. And I think that Parliament will support you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for joining us. Florica, I'd like to turn to you in the few minutes that we have left to give both of you the opportunity to respond to what we've just heard. I'd mostly be interested, for one, in your response to the concerns that we've heard about a potential trade-off between the Green Deal and the Blue Deal. And then also, I think both Oliver and has already mentioned it, we've also heard it from Pietro just now, this call for a Vice President in charge of water. What do you make of that?
Well, let me first of all say that I think we do not do ourselves a favor when we say it is either or. It is a Blue Deal or it's a Green Deal 2.0. That doesn't bring us anywhere. It is much more complex, and we will actually have to see that climate change, pollution, biodiversity loss is with us. And it's not going away. It's being exacerbated even. And on top of it, as we now know, we will have more wars, we will have more instability, we might have even more energy issues, and we might have even more inflation and social unrest. So what does it mean trade-offs? No. We have to look whether Europe, and I'm really speaking as European Commission for Europe, Europe retains the possibility to stay competitive in a sustainable way, or to say to have and to go for sustainable competitiveness or competitive sustainability. Both are two different terms, but we are needing both. So whatever you call it, and whether you have a vice president or a commissioner, you know, I've been 33 years in the Commission. That doesn't make the difference. The real difference is, do you go for an integrated approach? Do you really know what you mentioned, quantity and quality of water? We actually have as I said, the best acquis in the world on water quality, but we now have to look at water scarcity or too much water stress, right? So there we have to really strategize in a very integrated way. I also do not agree that we don't have enough data or foresight. On the contrary, science is more than clear. We have huge amount of data. And by the way, just my own colleagues now come up with a EU flood risk area viewer. We will have a drought observatory again and a database. We have ultimately a lot, and with IE we can even put more on top of it. And that's not the question. The question is, do we have the political will? And then to draw the consequences, knowing what is going to hit us. And I give you now two concrete examples, because pricing was mentioned. I fully agree pricing is an issue. But if you look at pricing, you need to have water storage first, because what do you want to, I mean, it's not naturally the natural resources or sources as such that will always prevail. You need to have water storage. Who is going to build the water storage? Where? When? And who takes care of it? In which form? Is it private? Is it public? Is it national? Is it regional? I mean, I'm just wanting to explain the complexity that we're having to face. And that means indeed choices. Knowing that already now the choices are not easy because we are already in a transition, I think we have to be careful in scoping first and making options and looking. And then the financing. We have lots of finance already now in the current MFF. We have, I think, 12 billion invested in wastewater, water management under the Cohesion Fund, and 13 under the RF and the other funds. So, I mean, this is, again, something, yes, we will have, like on the sectors, we have competition. And then the question is, EU still was a model for solidarity. Can we still keep that model of solidarity? That will be the big issue. And how much will it impact also regions? But I'm just not wanting to say everything is as easy and simple. But that's why we're embarking now, and I think we have one big chance. Contrary to the energy crisis, which hit us a little bit unprepared, and we came out of it not so bad, for the water crisis, we have time now to anticipate and prevent and prepare. And that, I think, is a huge chance, which we should see and seek. And because we have to stay afloat, I'm sorry for the pun, because in all the sectors there will be competition, but we have to look at it European.
And just to bring in a question from the audience here, which I think ties in quite nicely into this idea of competition, which is someone who did not give us their name, is asking, well, a large portion of water is currently used for agriculture. How do we convince farmers and farming enterprises to approach water in a sustainable way?
I have one
yes?
remark. We just came out with a water reuse in agriculture directive, which I was talking to member states, and there was somebody from Slovenia who said to me, you know, when you started with this reuse in agriculture, water in agriculture, I thought, okay, it might be nice for the southern countries. I'm not convinced, but I don't stand in the way. Today, he's using it. So that means you have to anticipate, and we do have solutions, and I think there are lots of solutions.
I think there's a lot to dig into further there, but we will have to wrap up, and I would still like to turn to you, Oliver. Based on what you've just heard, especially when it also comes to setting priorities within the Commission on which sectors to tackle, and also the idea of, well, you know, we've also heard the public sector surely cannot solve the water crisis alone. What are your, what are your reactions to what we've just heard?
Yeah, I found it a bit unfortunate that we jumped immediately to financing. First of all, we should know what we want to finance. Where do we want to be in 10 years, in 20, 30, 40 years? What will be the availability of water resources? What will be the needs of nature of the different sectors? So once we know that, we can develop strategies at all levels, so local up to the European level. And this must be, of course, accompanied by requirements for change, but also by proper financing. So for me, these are very important elements. And we also have to keep or mention again the cost of non-action. So we talk in some regions about companies that are discontinuing their activities because they don't have water. So what is the cost of that? Agriculture may not be possible anymore in certain regions because there is no water. So we need solutions, and the cost of non-action is certainly higher. I do not fully agree that there's enough money, and I do not fully agree that we have, or we may have the best water quality legislation in the world, but if you look at the reality on the ground, no, our water resources are still polluted. If you look at groundwater, pollution is even getting worse. And I just mentioned PFAS here, which is making headlines all over. It's causing tremendous problems to the water sector and tremendous costs. Financing, I can give you the position of the water sector, so drinking water, wastewater operators. I think Commission papers stated that only 9 countries ensure full cost recovery, which means in most countries our services are not fully financed, and we postpone necessary investments to the future, including in terms of the reduction of leakage. It's postponed because there is no funding. We have to invest more on the wastewater side now in making water reuse possible. But the more polluted the wastewater, the more expensive it becomes to produce that water, and who will spend money for it? So there is sometimes no willingness on the potential user side, like farmers, to spend money on it. We need to invest in climate change adaptation, so we need new water sources. We need interconnectors between linking different water suppliers to ensure that in case of drought, there is enough water for everybody. But again, the money may not be available, or planning periods are tremendously long and discouraging. So there is a need for a coordinated policy. There is a need for better financing at all levels, and private money, and this is clear, will be needed from our side, from industry and other sources. So I don't see it perhaps a bit less rosy. And perhaps one final comment. The Blue Deal, the name Blue Deal, Green Deal. Blue Deal is perhaps not the name we should use, but this is for me of secondary importance. What is important is really the content. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there's still lots to unpack here, but I'm afraid we will have to wrap this up now. Thank you, everyone, for this lively debate, and I think it's clear that we're very much at the beginning of a conversation on how to tackle this issue. I would like to take a last look at the poll, if we can bring that back up. But I think, as expected, and as I think we could already see in the discussion, I have it here on my screen as well, there is a vast majority, 76%, that thinks that funding for a potential EU Blue Deal should come from both the EU and national levels. So thank you to our speakers very much for joining us, also to you, the audience, for joining us in person, and also for tuning in online, of course, and also to our partner for making this event possible. We always love to hear your feedback, so feel free to email our events team at live@politico.eu. And you can check out our other events on our Politico events website. And with a number of events taking place this year, a big one being our Sustainable Future Week, taking place in November in Brussels. Thank you very much.
This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.